Dopamine hijacking. Your brain has a reward system built over millions of years of evolution. It releases dopamine, the chemical of motivation and pleasure, when you do something that helped your ancestors survive. Finding food, social connection, achieving a goal. The reward comes after the effort. That's how it was designed. Social media broke that system. Every notification, every like, every new post in your feed delivers a small hit of dopamine. Not because you earned it, because the platform engineered the timing to be unpredictable. Variable rewards, sometimes you get a response, sometimes you don't, are the most addictive pattern known to behavioral psychology. It's the same mechanism that makes slot machines impossible to walk away from. Your brain cannot tell the difference between a meaningful reward and a manufactured one. It just registers the chemical and asks for more. Over time, the natural rewards that used to satisfy you, a real conversation, a completed project, a quiet evening, produce less dopamine by comparison. They feel flat, insufficient, not enough. The platform didn't steal your happiness. It just made everything else feel smaller by comparison. Attention fragmentation. The human brain didn't evolve to process the volume of information a single hour of scrolling delivers, but it adapted to try, and that adaptation has a cost. The average social media feed presents a new piece of content every 1 to 3 seconds. Each piece demands a micro-evaluation. Is this worth my attention? In response, your brain learns to process information in shorter and shorter windows. Fast assessment, rapid dismissal, constant switching. This isn't multitasking. It's the systematic destruction of sustained focus. Deep work, the kind that produces actual value in your life, requires holding attention on one thing long enough for complex thought to develop. That process takes time. It requires resisting distraction. And it becomes harder every year you train your brain to abandon things after 3 seconds. The research is consistent. Heavy social media users show measurable reductions in their ability to sustain focus on single tasks. Not because they're less intelligent, because their brain's attention system has been trained by 10,000 daily repetitions to move on before anything gets deep. Your attention is the most valuable thing you own, and you've been giving it away for free. In exchange for content you won't remember tomorrow. The comparison engine. Human beings are hardwired for social comparison. It's not vanity. It's a survival mechanism. Knowing where you stand relative to others helped your ancestors make decisions about resources, alliances, and safety. Social media took that mechanism and fed it curated highlights from thousands of people simultaneously. Every person you follow presents a constructed version of their life. Not a lie, exactly, but a selection. The best moments, the most flattering angles, the achievements worth announcing. What you never see is the ordinary day, the anxiety behind the success, the relationship that looks perfect in photos and falls apart in private. But your brain doesn't process this intellectually. It processes it emotionally. And emotionally, you are comparing your unfiltered internal reality, your doubts, your mess, your ordinary Tuesday, against everyone else's highlight reel. Simultaneously, constantly. The result isn't motivation. For most people, it's a quiet, persistent sense of insufficiency. A feeling that everyone else is further along, more attractive, more successful, more connected. That you are somehow behind in a race nobody defined. You are not behind. You are just the only person in the room. Showing yourself the unedited version. Sleep architecture destruction. 2 things happen when you use social media before sleep. Both damage your brain's ability to rest. Neither is obvious while it's happening. First, the blue light emitted by your screen suppresses melatonin, the hormone that signals your brain to prepare for sleep. The effect lasts for hours after you put the phone down. Your brain's internal clock shifts later. Sleep onset delays. And the total amount of deep restorative sleep you get that night decreases. Second, the content itself. Social media is engineered to generate emotional responses, curiosity, comparison, mild anxiety, entertainment. Any of these states activates your nervous system. And an activated nervous system cannot enter the deep sleep stages where memory consolidation, emotional processing, and cellular repair happen. Most people who describe feeling tired despite sleeping 8 hours are not sleeping 8 hours of quality sleep. They're sleeping 8 hours of disrupted, shallow sleep. Entered late, interrupted by a brain that never fully downregulated. The phone on your nightstand is not a harmless habit. It is a direct intervention in one of the most critical biological processes your brain performs every night. Phantom notification syndrome. Have you ever felt your phone vibrate in your pocket, reach for it, and found no notification waiting? That sensation is real. It's called phantom vibration syndrome, and studies suggest it affects the majority of smartphone users. Your brain has become so conditioned to anticipate notifications that it begins generating the sensation on its own. The anticipation of the reward becomes indistinguishable from the reward itself. This is not a trivial quirk. It reveals something profound about what sustained social media use does to your nervous system. You are no longer using the phone reactively, responding when something actually happens. Your brain is proactively scanning for stimulation at a neurological level. The checking behavior has been internalized so deeply that it runs without conscious input. You don't decide to check. Your hand moves before the thought forms. When a behavior bypasses conscious decision-making and runs automatically in response to an anticipated reward, that behavior has crossed the threshold from habit into compulsion. You didn't develop a phone habit. You developed a reflex. And reflexes don't respond to willpower. They respond to conditioning. Identity erosion. Every time you post something, a subtle negotiation happens. Not consciously, but neurologically. You select what to share based on an anticipated response. You frame it to maximize approval. You monitor the reaction after. And if the response is positive, your brain registers it as confirmation that this version of you is worth presenting. Repeated thousands of times over years, this process does something quietly dangerous. It trains you to construct your identity based on external validation rather than internal values. You begin to know yourself through other people's reactions rather than through your own experience. The self you present online starts to feel more real than the self you actually are, because it's the one that gets seen, the one that gets confirmed, the one that exists in other people's feeds and therefore, in some neurological sense, in the world. The private self, the one that has doubts, contradictions, unshareable moments, starts to feel like a liability, something to manage rather than something to know. Over time, some people lose contact with what they actually think, feel, or want, separate from what performs well. They know what gets likes. They don't always know what they believe. The platform didn't take your identity. It gave you a more applauded one, and let you slowly forget the original. The outrage algorithm. Of all the emotions social media can generate, joy, curiosity, inspiration, nostalgia, one produces more engagement than any other. Outrage. Angry content gets shared more than positive content. It generates more comments. It keeps people on the platform longer. And every major platform's algorithm knows this. Not because engineers made a moral choice to promote anger, but because the optimization target is engagement, and anger engages. Your brain on outrage releases a stress hormone cocktail, cortisol and adrenaline, that feels activating and important. Righteous anger feels like caring. It feels like participation. It feels like something. But chronic, low-level outrage, the kind produced by 20 minutes of scrolling through contested content daily, keeps your nervous system in a mild but persistent threat state. The world starts to feel more dangerous than it is. Other groups feel more hostile than they are. Complex issues feel simpler and more urgent. And your capacity for nuance, patience, and genuine connection quietly contracts. You didn't become more informed. You became more activated. And activated feels like informed, until you realize the difference. None of these effects require you to be weak-willed, unintelligent, or naive. They are the outcome of billion-dollar systems built by some of the most talented engineers and psychologists alive, specifically optimized to produce exactly what you're experiencing. Knowing this doesn't fix it, but it changes the question. The question was never, why can't I control my screen time? The question is, what was I given in exchange for everything I handed over? Your attention, your sleep, your focus, your identity, your emotional baseline. And whether the answer to that question is worth it is the only decision that was ever actually yours to make.